Artifact 8 highlights Standard 4.1, ISTE Criterion 12, Standard 4.3, ISTE Criterion 14, Standard 4.4, ISTE Criterion 15, and Standard 5.2, ISTE Criterion 17. Artifact 8, Standard 4.1, ISTE Criterion 12, Collaborate with others. Dedicate planning time to collaborate with colleagues to create authentic learning experiences that leverage technology. I began the instructional technology degree at Kennesaw State University in spring of 23. I was ecstatic to get to create an engaged learning project with my twin sister. We have never worked in the same school district since student teaching, so it was exciting to get to collaborate on a project that I would implement in my ninth grade algebra class. My twin sister, Christy DeLoach, is an instructional coach at Jeff Davis High School, which is about an hour and 45 minutes from where I live. She was the co-creator of the Engaged Learning Project, a GimKit expert and virtual collaborator. I'm the co-creator of the Engaged Learning Project, the classroom teacher, the instructor of the Engaged Learning Project, and the facilitator of the virtual collaboration. Not only did Christy and I collaborate together to create the Engaged Learning Project, we also submitted it to our colleagues in the class. So we submitted it to our professor and colleagues to get feedback about our initial learning project draft. In addition to getting peer feedback for the initial project idea, we posted our first draft and our final draft and received peer feedback multiple times, and it really helped us to finalize that final engaged learning project. Artifact 8, Standard 4.3, ISTE Criterion 14. Use collaborative tools to expand students' authentic, real-world learning experiences by engaging virtually with experts, teams, and students locally and globally. GimKit Collab is the digital tool that we chose to use to allow our students to collaborate together and then share their product out locally and globally. Ms. DeLoach is a previous math teacher and a current instructional coach in Jeff Davis High School, which is about an hour and 45 minutes from where I live. She also happens to be my identical twin, and she served as the GimKit Collab expert for my students to collaborate with virtually. Ms. DeLoach recorded a how-to video for my students, and we watched it together as a class. The video was then stored in Google Classroom for students to use as a reference as much as they needed to throughout the process. Ms. DeLoach and I continued to collaborate throughout the process. We chose to use GimKit Collab with the quadratics unit, and it was going well until we had some answers that were irrational and imaginary and getting into radicals and having to type in more complex answers. And because teachers always have an equation editor option, we just assumed that students would as well. So when we started looking at it from a student view and having students type in answers, they had an issue because they did not have the equation editor on their side. So Ms. DeLoach and I collaborated about the best way to handle this, and she did some research on like how it could be done, and we ended up just having to edit questions on the teacher's end with the equation editor as we looked at different questions and how they were keyed in. In addition to the GimKit Collab game being stored on GimKit's site for anybody that does a search of quadratics review, Ms. DeLoach also shared it with the math teachers at her school for them to use it as they prepared for their quadratics unit test as well. Artifact 8, Standard 4.4, ISTE Criterion 15. Demonstrate cultural competency when communicating with students, parents, and colleagues, and interact with them as co-collaborators in student learning. In iTech 7400, we did a lot of research into culturally responsive pedagogy while we were creating our Engaged Learning Project. And this is one of the things that we submitted our project for peer feedback from our colleagues to make sure that we were being culturally responsive when designing this engaging learning opportunity. It was noted that since the students were taking on the role of assessment creator, they were able to customize the real-world context of the math problems and allowing them choice. So students can use their personal interest and experiences when creating assessment items. I use Gmail, Infinite Campus, and Google Classroom regularly to communicate with students and the student supporters. Though my classroom is fully face to face after being a virtual teacher for 3 years prior, I load everything into Google Classroom as if I were still in the virtual setting because of attendance and access to parents. So, all of my units, anything we do in class, is stored in Google Classroom as a resource. So, the original copy of notes, the updated copies of notes. So, I use Kami, a digital technology tool, so that everything is constantly being updated. And so students have access to it. Student supporters, such as co teachers, resource teachers, tutors, and parents, have access to all of these resources at all times. In addition to Google Classroom and Gmail, Infinite Campus allows me to send out individual or group messages. I use Infinite Campus when I want to keep a documentation log of it. So anytime I send something from Infinite Campus, whether it's to a class, all of my classes, certain individuals, that log will automatically be updated for the student, and then other teachers and student supporters can see what comments have already been made or what conversations have already taken place with the student's parents. Artifact 8, Standard 5.2, ISTE Criterion 17. Align to content area standards. Design authentic learning activities that align with content area standards and use digital tools and resources to maximize active deep learning. So, in the Engaged Learning Project, we focused on content standards and technology standards. So, our content standards focused on finding roots and zeros of quadratic solutions. For the algebra students, we only included the real solution type, which was rational and irrational. For technology standards, we focused on being a creative communicator and a global collaborator. So Ms. Deloche and I wanted to create an engaged learning project and implement an engaged learning project that allowed active and deep learning, leveraging digital tools and resources so that students could gain mastery of the quadratic content area while also gaining vital competencies with problem solving, critical thinking, effective communication and collaboration, and belief in their ability to grow and improve with hard work. And so using Desmos to visualize the roots and solutions of the quadratic equations, and then to write the questions that they would be practicing in class and their classmates would be using, and future classes of mine will use, and classes at Jeff Davis High School were using. And you can see one of the student examples that was on paper. And again, this one was had put on paper because when students tried to enter it, there was not the equation editor part. And so we had to problem solve. And so it was worked out on paper. And then you can see my writing was checking it and then putting it in. And then they could see that question in the GimKit review game. So the student that made this question would then see this question as part of the GimKit review for the quadratics test.